Good morning and a happy Thanksgiving Eve to everybody. My name is Sam Hennessy.
My name is Rio Canori.
And we would like to introduce a new podcast that we are rolling out called Civil Discussions. I will be doing the interviews and Rio will be keeping things on track behind the scenes. We are both members of the American Society of Civil Engineers, or ASCE, at the University of Florida. It's just one of many chapters across the country that assist students in their progression through the university system. And with the help of our local chapter, this podcast is being made possible. This YouTube series will be aimed at providing a resource for new freshmen just graduated from high school, current university students considering civil engineering as a track, or current engineers wanting just to learn more about their field in general. It will attempt to cover topics across many different aspects of civil engineering, from college life decisions that can be made by young engineers and students, along with tips on what to keep an eye out for. Also, day-to-day aspects of civil engineering will be addressed within most companies that a lot of classes do not even address or mention. And in addition, we will be talking about new and upcoming things in the field of civil engineering and what you can expect to see given from the perspective of the guests that we have on. Without any more delays, I would like to welcome our guest here. He is our very first guest, Mr. Peter Moore, and I know he's eager to talk with us today. Mr. Moore became the president of the firm now known as Chen Moore and Associates in January of 2008, based out of Fort Lauderdale. Mr. Moore is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the organization and has implemented procedures for project management, human resources, and financial planning, among other things. He has served as project manager and principal in charge for various projects totaling more than $500 million in construction value. This is based in Florida, Latin America, and the Middle East. He has both a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering and a Master's of Engineering from the University of Florida. Go Gators. And as well, he is a licensed professional engineer in Florida. So, without further ado, we would like to welcome Mr. Peter Moore and thank him graciously for taking time to join us today.
Thank you very much, and it's with all humility that I appreciate being invited here and honestly being the first guest. So please feel free to start shooting questions at me and let's see what we can do today.
All right, perfect. So let's get right into it. I know that this is a question that many students ask themselves at least 1,000,000 times when they're going through college or looking for a job. When companies are looking to hire students graduating out of college, what accolades or attributes about them set apart the best candidates, just besides, the typical grade or their GPA or their internships?
Sure, I have a pretty short answer for this one. Everyone needs to play to their strengths. So play to your strengths throughout your career. So if you had a high GPA, put that on your resume and talk to it. If you had a lot of internships, put that on your resume and talk to it. If you did a lot of activities in ASCE or something else, talk to it. I personally didn't get a chance to do any of those. I graduated with a relatively low GPA, but I 100% self-financed my education. I worked full time at the Subway out by the Oaks Mall. I worked 45 hours a week for the entire time I was there. So I actually put that I had 100% self-finance, and I received job offers based on the fact that people appreciated the fact I was able to multitask. And so the nice part about putting whatever your strength is into your resume or into your speech or into your discussion with the future employers is the fact that that's the organization. If they're into high GPAs, they're going to gravitate towards the candidates with high GPAs. And if they're into multitaskers, they're going to gravitate towards those. So you're going to end up finding yourself much more likely to find yourself in the organization that you want to be in by playing to your strengths.
Right. So these companies want you to be you. They want you to highlight the best aspects about yourself.
Absolutely. And, it's actually okay to talk about some things you're not so good at. Obviously nobody starts out talking about, I stink at this, but it's not a bad thing to be able to say, I struggle the ability to public speak. And I said, okay, that's something we can fix. That's something we can work on. Let's send you to Toastmasters. Let's send you to things that you can work on. Mm-hmm. So, those are the sort of things where if you are just genuine, you're going to end up working for a genuine organization. You're going to have a genuine career experience.
Right. So basically, companies want you to be you as an applicant.
Absolutely. I mean, being the most genuine person that you can is what's most likely to have you fall into the correct role. Obviously, you know, obviously it's best when the role that you're put in as an entry level is something that's you have the most aptitude for, and you're always going to gravitate towards things that you're good at. That's just human nature. People always gravitate towards things that they're good at. But a really great boss will help you stretch how good you can be in that particular thing, but also set up a safety net on the things you're not so great at.
Right. So the learning experience is all there, and it's all about just starting where you're at, finding that mentor in your life and finding that good leadership that can push you in the right direction and kind of foster what you have to develop.
Well, my favorite thing to say is that if you want to work for an organization, make sure that you work for an organization where you like the people that you work with and you trust the people you work for. Because in every particular case, you're going to find that level of your peers is going to be something that's going to be great to help you build, to help build your career. And as long as you can trust your supervisor, you can be as honest and genuine as you possibly can be. Because you know what? Life is complicated, and life always isn't a perfect line. I've been fortunate enough to work for my company for 21 years. But it's actually relatively rare these days to see someone who's worked for a company for more than 20 years. And that you basically had to take it. You basically took that job and you basically had to go as long as you possibly could. And even if you had a bad supervisor, you still had to deal with it. Today's world is not like that. Today's world is very dynamic. And today's world allows for people to question leadership. I really think that, our growth has really come since the Great Recession. And a lot of that growth is a result of the fact that we built a quality foundation for a family culture, and we're continuing to expand that family culture. When I took over as being president of the company, I was only 32 years old. And I knew that if I didn't grow the company, then there would be people who would be at the company for 30 years, always working for me in the same role. That was not something that was going to be a tenable thing for me. So what we needed to do is we needed to grow the company in order to provide more growth opportunities for leadership, for management, for exploration, for technical depth, for everything else that we did. And so we're continuing to grow the company to make sure that there's opportunities for everybody. But at the same time, we're doing our best to maintain our family culture.
Absolutely. That's super important these days. So another question, being marketable is one major aspect of growth for a young student. Would you say it's helpful to take classes outside of the engineering curriculum that fall under writing, business, even things like agriculture or art?
Sure. Well, I'm not going to say a particular class is going to be your key for success, but I think that you need to realize that all students realize that the best engineer in the world, nobody's going to know you're the best engineer in the world if you can't express yourself. So if you don't have writing skills, speaking skills, if you don't have marketing skills, you're not going to be ever known as the best engineer in the world. And I'll tell you that as an example, one of the first things you'll ever see, you're going to spend a ton of time writing. And that's probably one of the secret things that nobody ever tells you is you're going to end up writing technical specifications. You're going to be writing notes on plans. You're going to be writing meeting minutes. You're going to end up writing marketing proposals. There's a wide variety of things you're going to end up writing. And if your writing skills are poor, then people are going to judge you based on your writing skills, not on your engineering aptitude. And so those are the sort of things where, obviously if you're strong in writing, that's a good thing. But those are the sort of things where I would say that realize that the job of engineering isn't there sitting down and doing, math problems or engineering workshops or structures labs. The world of engineering is how do you translate all that great stuff that you learned in school into actual practical information that contractors are going to build, or you're going to be able to explain to legislators or to elected officials and that sort of thing. So that's making sure that you're comfortable explaining what you did is way more important than actually doing what you did once you graduate.
So you don't have to be exactly a prize writer, prize poet, but you do have to express yourself, and you have to be able to convey your thoughts. You have to be clear and concise in what kind of explanations you're giving to the client or to your superiors or to the people below you even. You have to just be fully aware of what you're speaking about and know how to get it across.
Yeah, and Mr. Moore, I also wanted to, from my own experience as a senior at the University of Florida, I've come to notice how big the writing aspect of it is, because, you know, you could do all this technical, and you could have all this technical information, all this math calculation, but if you can't explain it to a person that's not an engineer, then it's almost like it's just not useless, but it won't be very useful to I guess business leaders that don't understand what these numbers mean and need to be simplified so that they can make a quantity out of it or some kind of.
No, I totally appreciate that. I think, you know, I mean, think about the most fundamental things. I mean, I know email isn't super popular among students anymore, but it's still it's still the prevalent mode of communication amongst professionals right now. And if your email doesn't make sense, then you're not going to be able to communicate with your peers. You're not going to be able to communicate with your boss. You're not going to be able to communicate with your clients. You're not going to be able to communicate with the general public. It's even more important now during COVID when 50% of the employees of a company, 70% of the employees of a company, 20% depends on the company. We're about 50% of our employees aren't even in the office. I used to be able to just walk down the office and go talk to somebody and say, "What did you mean?" But now, you know, you try to do that and then you end up Skype chatting, or you end up on a Teams chat, or you end up on a Zoom meeting, or however it works. The thing is, you have to be able to verbalize or be able to write down what it is that you're talking about. And without being able to do that, then honestly, a lot of stuff that you do is worthless, because I'm really glad you ran 12 models, but I don't understand what you just modeled. You know, how are we able to explain that? Why did we do what we did? That's probably the hardest thing to do. Why did we do what we did, and why is it important?
Exactly. That's how it all relates down to the project. Exactly. So, Mr. Moore, you are actually Region 5 Director for the American Society of Civil Engineers, and you're also the president of the Broward chapter of the Florida Engineering Society. What are the benefits of becoming involved in a professional society such as ASCE or ACEC for young students in university life, or even past university, as they are, you know, just now coming out into the engineering world, maybe unsure of where to go, maybe unsure of what to do?
Sure. This is probably one of my favorite messages to deliver to students, to younger members, and to the employers of students about to be younger members. Because really and truly, being involved in professional societies is a really safe place in order to explore project management, scheduling, cost estimating, public speaking skills. All those other soft skills that aren't taught in school are absolutely critical in order to be involved in a professional society. You know, if you can put together a volunteer event and you can motivate volunteers, you absolutely know what it's like to manage a team of people. If you can put together a luncheon meeting where you have, hey, it's going to cost $15 for lunch because the room costs $500 and we need to do this, and you need to set up a schedule for that, you can do cost estimating and project scheduling. All of these things are the soft skills you don't necessarily learn in school, but they're absolutely taught. And professional societies are such an incredibly safe place to do this. Because one, if you do screw up, nobody really cares. It's okay. We're all still going to have lunch together. Yeah, sure, the sandwiches showed up late and the speaker, you know, spoke a little bit late and a couple people had to leave early. It's not that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. But even better, the peers that surround you in those professional societies, they're really there to make sure that you don't have that failure.
Right.
And so, you know, somebody says, hey, it's your turn. You're going to run the luncheon meeting. I just say embrace it. And then tell your employer, hey, man, I just ran an event that had 35 people and spoke in front of them. Because if you can speak in front of that many people, you can absolutely present for a multi-million-dollar project.
Mm-hmm. And you're all in it together. Everybody's trying to get to an end goal.
100%. I mean, look, the nice thing about the civil engineering profession is there's very few people that really are vindictive or out to get you. We're not lawyers. You know, we're not out there trying to stab each other in the back. Engineers are generally well-meaning people. You know, we chose a profession of service. We chose a life of service for a reason. And everyone who's involved in a professional society, they're the 10% of the, of the entire group. Those 10% of people are even more dedicated to the idea of helping others and being able to bring something to a better conclusion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it's not a cutthroat Tesla organization for the most part that you're going to be going into.
I mean, look, when we're all standing there in the room and trying to chase a $10 million fee project that you know will keep 20 of your people busy for 5 years. Yeah, I mean, we'll kind of give each other dirty looks. But at the end of the day, we all shake hands. We all know that, in general, the best person, the best team, the best leader typically wins. And, and also, I mean, in our profession, there's also a certain amount of rotation. Like, hey, there's 10 qualified firms and, your turn's up or your turn's not. Mm-hmm. So it's not, I mean, can you be exceptionally lucky? Yes. But if you're really, really good, you're always going to have a place in this profession.
Love that. Love that answer. And let's keep it moving along, I would say. We got a bunch of questions here, but we're going to try and get to the most pertinent ones, obviously. I think a good question to ask for, students who are just, seeing the day-to-day classes and their class registration, and maybe they're in a professional society such as ASCE, but when they're just about to go out into the field, they're just about to graduate, they're just about to get started in their life, are there any unexpected challenges that face civil engineers that most students wouldn't even know to think of?
Very good question. I really think that the biggest thing that most people don't think of in their civil engineering education is how important the legal field is to the work that we do. And I don't mean, the fact that we're always in court. But what I mean is, you'll sit down there in your first week, you might be asked to do a calculation. And, you might be asked to put together some meeting minutes because you were in the meeting and maybe your boss did all the talking, but you want to write down what's going on. Later, you'll be asked to put together some technical specifications or some general notes on a plan. You'll probably do some quantity takeoffs. All those sort of things, will happen. But what you don't realize is that when things are going well, all they are is engineering matters. But when they're not going well, they end up in court. And the ultimate judge of a lot of the things that we deal with is actually a judge in a courtroom. And unfortunately, litigation is part of what goes on. And the engineers play a very particular role in construction litigation. We're the experts. We have responsibilities to mankind. We have responsibilities to society as a whole. And as a result, a lot of the things that we do in our testimony is often considered to be, it should be considered to be expert testimony in a lot of the things that we do. So, what you'll realize is that every word that you write down, everything that you do could potentially be something can be found in discovery in a trial. In addition to that, there's other things that you don't even start thinking about until much later. If you're an environmental engineer and you're looking to try to figure out a new treatment process or a better treatment process, you're going to end up going through rules that are dictated by the legislature. If you're going to go back and look into transportation projects, when you start trying to figure out how to acquire right-of-way in order to make sure that you can do your roadway expansion or a new railway project or something, mm-hmm. all of those real estate deals are legal transactions. So we are always finding ourselves in married to the legal profession and providing support to them. It always didn't used to be like that. A lot of times engineers used to lead this. And sometime in the past, way before I became involved, the lawyers basically do a better job of getting involved in politics and in legislative affairs. And as a result, they've taken the lead in a lot of the items where engineers used to take the lead. Mm-hmm. So, we're always going to be married at the hip. And right now, lawyers are in charge. And if that sounds like something that irritates you, you don't need to go out and get a law degree. What you need to do is you need to be an advocate for yourself. You need to realize that right now, there's only 3 engineers in the state of Florida legislature. So there's 160 people, and there's only 3 engineers.
Wow.
Actually, there's 2 engineers and 1 environmental scientist who happens to own an engineering firm. But as a result, we're woefully underrepresented in the Florida legislature, just as an example. And that's pretty much throughout the country. It's really rare to find engineers that are willing to get in positions of leadership. Now, to students and young engineers and all of you out there, a life of service is nothing if you can't express yourself. So, consider the opportunity to get involved and find yourself in a position of leadership like that. Then you won't necessarily be sitting around in 30 years complaining about what the legal profession's done to our profession.
So they definitely have a say in what's going on, for sure.
I had a quick question. So when you were at the University of Florida, did you get any, I guess, like teachings about the legal aspect of it? I guess like even if it was brief, and also I guess to follow that question up, do you think that the current curriculum in all universities across the country, especially in engineering program, should focus more on like the legal aspects of the workplace, or just like projects in general?
Those are really good questions. My only exposure to anything legislative or legal in my undergraduate education related to ethics, because the state of Florida and the ways in which you become an engineering intern or a professional engineer are all governed by various portions of the state statutes and rules governed by the Florida Board of Professional Engineers. So that was brought up when I was in my undergraduate degree. In my graduate degree, I was fortunate enough that when I was taking some of my environmental classes, I actually did my graduate degree distance learning. And so I was trying to grab from a pool of classes that were offered distance learning. Two of my classes involved a lot of water law. And I actually spent some time over at the law library doing research, which apparently you don't do anymore. But 15 years ago, I was up there. Actually, 20 years ago, I was up there doing legal research and things in the law library, and I realized how important and how inextricably linked those two were. So, undergraduate in particular, education, and often if you don't have an undergraduate program at your university, your graduate program, are really driven by ABET accreditation, because ABET accreditation is what's required in order for you to get your licensure. If we don't pass I think it's every 5 years. Dr. Tiki will kill me. I don't remember what it is. I'm on his advisory board. I should know this. But it's every 5 years, 4 years, 6 years. It's around 5 years. They come in and they audit our curriculum for very, very specific things. And there's not a lot of room in there, particularly with the state of Florida looking to reduce the number of credit hours. I think your civil engineering curriculum is 131 hours.
Mine is 133
okay.
currently, but I know they're trying to reduce the amount of credits.
Yeah, mine was 144 when I went to UF 23 years ago.
They're trying to get that extra fifth or sixth year for you.
Yeah, I know. I spent 4.5 years at UF. And it's funny because I came in with a year's worth of AP credits, so I really should have been a 5.5 year senior. Most people graduated in 5 or 5.5 years when I went to school. I graduated in 4.5. There were the very lucky few to graduate in 6.5 and 7.5. But for the most part, it was an extra year of school. And in there's a lot more room for exploration of different things like that. And a lot more electives. We had a lot more design electives and things. But it's a very good question. Like I said, I do serve the Department Advisory Board, and we have a meeting December 22nd. For anybody who's going to listen to that before then, students are always welcome to come and have a discussion with the advisory board without any professors local. No professors are present. And so what it does is it gives an opportunity for us to convey these messages to the leadership, to Dr. Hatfield, to Dr. Tiki, used to be Dr. Wu. I apologize that I forget who's in charge of the Environmental Engineering and Sciences program right now. But we always were able to, convey those messages. That's definitely something I'll bring back. I'm going to make a note to talk about, just trying to incorporate that. I have guest lectured several times at UF about risk management, and they're, in the Entrepreneur Institute and a couple other places, the ability to talk about risk management always brings up legal implications. And so, maybe if there's, I know they're trying to have a little bit more emphasis on risk, so that might be starting to make its way into the program, but that's definitely something that's important. Mm-hmm. And, everybody should pay attention to risk in every point in their life. Financial advice, just from that to anything else that you're doing, you should always pay attention to risk and have understand what your risk tolerance is. But from a risk management standpoint for your projects, that's definitely really important to talk about in a legal way.
Absolutely. You heard it here first, everybody. Tune in to that meeting there. So you're talking about finances for a second there. You also have a wealth of experience when it comes to managing wealth, especially as a member of Florida Tax Watch, I believe.
I'm on the board of Florida Tax Watch.
Mm-hmm. According to Indeed.com, one of the largest job search engines, the average starting salary for a civil engineer in Florida is about $65,000, and 82,000 for more established positions. A big question that we have been asked to ask you, primarily by students, has there been a trend up, down, staying the same in terms of salaries for civil engineers recently?
Sure. Okay, I was hired, again, I mean, it seems like a long time ago, but it's basically as long as you've been alive, I was hired. I was hired at $27,500 a year. And back then, most people were getting hired around 30. I remember specifically thinking to myself, $30,000 a year, that's awesome. And when my first company offered me $27,500, I thought to myself, well, I guess I'll take it. I like the organization.
Right.
In my particular case, there weren't a whole lot of options.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a mini downturn in the late 90s. But I've seen things come in waves. 5 years after I graduated, I was interviewing students at the University of Florida, and the average wage was $40,000 a year. And I've seen, what'll happen is there'll be a couple years in a row where it stays relatively stagnant, and then some employer, some market trend, something will change the market, and it'll continue to go up. I mean, our starting salaries are right around that. I mean, we're a little bit lower than that number typically for the typical starting salary, but we also have really competitive benefits. So in some cases, our benefits, matter more than the actual salary. So 100% make sure you understand what your total compensation is. Understand that if somebody's paying, for your health insurance and you're not having to pay for your health insurance, that's a huge benefit for you. Think about things like, paying for your phone, paying for, anything else that you get as a benefit. Especially when the company is able to deduct it, it's a huge benefit it's a huge win for both the company and for the employee, because it basically relieves them of the responsibility for doing that. Mm-hmm. Do I see a trend coming up or down? I don't know. I know that the trends were hung up during the Great Recession that we talked about before. I know salaries were hung up then. Did they go down? No, not really. Honestly, there just weren't a lot of jobs. Right now, I can't tell you whether or not COVID is going to be something that's going to be a similar thing where things stagnate or not. Right now, I hope this comment ages well. We're really busy, and it really depends on certain things that are going on. I mean, we've hired 8 people this year. We had eight interns this summer. We're in a growth mode as a result of infrastructure failures that are going on that really don't care about the economy. Now, obviously, people need to be working, paying taxes and things in order to be able to provide for those public services. But, right now, I don't see anything decreasing. It depends on how things, fall out as far as final national politics go, whether or not there's going to be able to be some additional stimulus. This could be something that drags on. This could be something that's a minor blip in the road. Unfortunately, this is what your life is going to be like. Everything about life is about cycles. Things are very cyclical. Things are good. Things aren't so good. Things are good. Things aren't so good. What you need to do is try to flatten the curve as much as possible. Make your highs not so high and your lows not so low. And again, I talked about risk management tolerance before, but that comes down to your own personal lives, like living within your means. So, this didn't happen for me. It doesn't matter. I make $4,000 a month more than I need to. Mm-hmm. The one last closing piece of advice, though, when it comes to that, and specifically about living within your means, is remember, no matter what your starting salary is, first of all, whatever that starting salary is obviously going to be more than you're making now. And so, yay!
News ahead.
Right. Doesn't matter if it's the DOT training program, it's like $45,000 a year. It doesn't matter because it's already going to be more than you're making now. Don't choose your job based on the fact that one job's offering you $2,000 a year to start more than somebody else. Your career is going to be very long. Mm-hmm. And so this is just this little first year, 2, 3, 4, maybe 20, maybe 40, maybe 60. Maybe you spend your entire career with that company. But look about long-term potential. So live within your means. So obviously spend a lot less than whatever that initial starting salary is, no matter what it is. But don't make that choice based on what that starting salary is. I've heard of people quitting, giving up jobs to go work for somebody they didn't really want to work to for $2,000 a year as a starting salary. And I go, that's just stupid. You went to go work for the worst company I've ever heard of for $2,000 a year more than, this great company was offering. It's just a really bad idea. And it's really short-sighted. And I'll tell you, employers will also see those that are short-sighted.
Right.
So, if I make an offer and somebody chooses to go with a company that I don't have a whole lot of, I mean, maybe respect is a strong word, but I don't really appreciate that company very much. I'll write that down, and that person will be mentally noted in my mind. And unless sometime later in the future they come back to me and say, "Hey, I made a real mistake by making my initial choice to go do this," they may have decided that they're never going to work with me for the rest of their lives.
So it all comes back around to where you fit, where you're applying to, where you think you belong, where you find that company culture that really just makes you feel included and an integral part of the team.
100%.
Don't look at just the number. Don't look at just the price tag on the Indeed.com website.
Right.
And we are not sponsored by Indeed.com, by the way. This is not.
Hey, look, we utilize Indeed, so I can't even complain, man. We utilize Indeed, and it's actually a very complicated thing for us because when you put one ad on Indeed, and no matter how specific you think you're going to get, you get 174 people to apply. And it's like 6 are qualified. So it's a really difficult weeding through process for employers. Indeed does not do a great job of weeding through it. So if Indeed ever listens to this, call me up, give me a free platinum membership, and I'll tell you why.
You heard it here first, folks. You heard it here first.
Boom.
So another thing that I would like to talk about is whenever I say, I'm studying civil engineering, people are like, "Oh, you're the guy that makes the bridges and the sewers, right?" And, I am. At the end of the day, that is what a civil engineer does. But my question for you is that do you think there's anything on the horizon that is going to change the way civil engineers work and function in the coming few decades? And what about that is exciting? What about that is new and fresh and just all around good for the profession?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this could have been a podcast on its own.
We'll do a little spark notes here.
Yeah, I was on the ASCE board of direction for the last 3 years. They have something called the Future World Vision, which is really trying to envision what the world is going to be like in increments over the next 50 years. The idea is to start some really big picture thinking about how the world is going to adjust and how civil engineers fall into that world. So huge plug for ASCE right there. Boom. But really the things that I see that are coming up, and I'll be very brief about this. You mentioned a little bit earlier some disruptive technologies. When you end up with something that's a completely disruptive technology, it changes the way everybody does things. The Ubers and Airbnbs of the world didn't exist 10 years ago, and all of a sudden, hotels and taxi companies are in a totally different world than they were in because they didn't plan for those technologies. In our world, we're probably looking at electric vehicles or autonomous vehicles or electric autonomous vehicles. What they're going to do is they're going to change the way in which cars drive. They're going to change the way in which cars park. They're going to change the way in which revenue from those things come about. You probably didn't know that the average airport gets about 30% of its revenue from parking. The average car is only something like 7% of the time. So if transportation, because something is transportation as a service, as opposed to you own a car, the world's going to totally change when it comes to that. And so, what does that mean? It means that we're going to design our bridges differently because autonomous vehicles do something called platooning. And they get really close to each other because they're not jerks like us and they won't hit each other. So you look at
bumper is no issue.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, hey man, you can ride me all you want to. Hey, tailgating me. Oh no, it's fine. It's an autonomous vehicle. But you also look at how surface parking and parking garages work, how people interact with those. What are people going to do with those spaces? Some buildings in downtown Miami have 12 stories of parking garage. What are you going to do with those 12 stories of empty space when cars no longer need to park? And so those are some really portions of disruptive technology to go in. And I'm not even going to get into the weird biomedical things because unfortunately, 70% of organs for organ transplants come from car accidents. And autonomous vehicles don't crash for the most part. And so what is that going to do when there's a lack of organs? So we're going to start having to grow our own organs and stuff. Anyway, I could totally get off on a whole thing about that. But
that is something you don't even realize.
Yeah, and that happens all the time until you start exploring a subject. And so disruptive technology like autonomous or electric vehicles is really going to impact us. And they're doing extensive study. We're working with a huge group right now at Florida Polytechnic University, really getting into how all these things interact. I think big data is going to be huge. I think that big data is already huge, but I think it's going to get huger. I guess I shouldn't say that around our about to be ex-president, but it's really important because when I first started out my career, we'd spent a long time trying to figure out, hey, let's survey this street, but not that street, because we don't spend the money. This street's the important one. That one's not so important. And, now it's no longer a question of, what data to go out and acquire. It's what to do with this massive data. There's also legal implications with that. If you fly a drone over to take, 17 trillion LiDAR points, because your project is, and you have this great survey done for your project, but you notice something in the LiDAR, in the survey, that happens to be a safety hazard that's outside your project limits, are you legally responsible to report that or not? How much attention are people paying to this huge data? And so that's going to be something that's really cool and really important to pay attention to.
Absolutely.
Two more quick things. Commoditization. We're always up against the idea that engineering can be commoditized. To be made something as as low cost as possible. You probably heard about the, computer shops in India or China that were, in the 90s and the early 2000s were, paying people $3 an hour to do the work. Now AI is doing it. So now you don't even need, there's a program right now that can take 50 buildings, study what their structural engineering is for 54-story buildings, and design a building better than those 50 buildings put together, way more efficient. But you have to understand that what this does is this also provides us opportunities. So if we don't understand that, you need to get out of the things that are being commoditized and you need to make sure you take positions of leadership, that's really where things go. Get out of the day-to-day if that's going to be commoditized. Get into the position of leadership and understanding how that works and how those 4-story buildings interact with each other and build it like a civil engineering system. And the very last thing, particularly important in Florida, is going to be climate change. I don't care whether you're on what political side you are or anything else. I'm born and raised in South Florida. I live in East Fort Lauderdale now. It's higher than it was when I was a kid. So, suck it up if you don't agree, but it's higher than it was when I was a kid. The rainfall is more intense. Yeah, hugely, and hugely again. Sorry about that. But, we're taking a look at the fact that the seas are higher, the groundwater's higher, the storms are more intense, the hurricanes are stronger. All these things are coming, and understanding how that is as a trend and understanding how to predict that trend is going to be hugely important to us because, again, the University of Florida is one of the leaders when it comes to hurricane research. And I think it's really important for us to understand all of those things as they relate to climate change because they don't just impact flooding. We're talking about, what the impacts are on tall buildings. What are the impacts on transportation infrastructure? What are the, impacts on rail systems, airports, everything. Everything is impacted by it. So resiliency itself and the ability to be resilient to climate change, it's again, one of those really cool, exciting things that's going to provide great opportunities if you pay attention to it in the future.
Right. Coastal engineering is probably going to have to be a new and upcoming big new field, it sounds like.
We have a very good coastal engineering program at the University of Florida.
I'm looking forward to it. That's my plan. But thank you so much, Mr. Moore. These answers were incredible, very insightful, super helpful just for anybody who is potentially just looking on where to go for civil engineering, what they want to start getting interested in, or even just generally what to do. Maybe some people just don't know where to go, and that's what this podcast is designed for. That's why we're bringing on guests like you who have all the experience in the field. You have all the technical expertise. You have the management expertise. You see things from different sides that most people wouldn't, consider. And we just want to thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so
Honestly, much. Like I said, it's a complete honor to be here. Anyone listening to this is always welcome to reach out to me personally. ASCE is an absolute huge resource. So please go to asce.org. Find your local representatives, find your student representatives, find your younger member groups, find your branches, your sections, your institutes. There's so many great resources to be able to explore your career in civil engineering. And there are other podcasts about starting your civil engineering career with ASCE. So just so many great things. I really do appreciate it. I'll say it again, go Gators. Anything I could ever do for the University of Florida ASCE or any of you listening, please let me know.
We'd love to see it. Go Gators, as always.
To have you back on the podcast.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.